Hi everyone, Year 10 in particular. If you are working totally from home during this lockdown, this is what I'm working on in class with the students that are coming into school. So it's some Victorian text. I know it says homework at the top. It's some Victorian text, and it's because we will be looking at, and you are likely to get, a text from the Victorian era during your GCSEs next year. Now, I know it's a bit difficult when you suddenly get a booklet home and you think, I'm used to missing class helping me. So I'm going to do the first lesson with you. And then if you guys are finding these useful, then obviously I will try and do one for each section in the booklet. So you'll do one of these per week, all right, leading up to half term. Okay, so the first task, and hopefully you'll have your highlighters and pens to underline, etc. So I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to talk you through the task that you'll be doing. So, task 1 is from Oliver Twist. Okay, so we all know that, you know, when he asked for extra food, he was in the workhouse, and if you wanted to do extra work, you can Google about the Victorians. You could look up what it was like to live in the workhouses, what it was like to be a child in the Victorian era, particularly if you were poor. Okay, so in Oliver Twist, in the extract I'm going to read to you now, the boys are living in a Victorian workhouse, and they're all in the dining hall and they're eagerly awaiting their evening meals. They're all hungry. The room in which the boys were fed was a large stone hall, with a copper at one end, out of which the master, dressed in an apron for the purpose and assisted by one or two women, ladled the gruel at meal times. So he's got this big pot, everyone, okay? He's got this big pot and he's serving up that gruel. We all know that from Oliver Twist. Of this festive composition, each boy had one porringer, and in a minute you're going to be asked to look up what some of these words mean, so I'm not going to explain some of them to you now. And no more except on occasions of great public rejoicing, when he had 2 ounces and a quarter of bread besides. And as you can tell, it's a bit of a mouthful. These older texts are sort of harder to read than, I suppose, something from like Roald Dahl or David Walliams, sort of more modern texts. The bowls never wanted washing. The boys polished them with their spoons till they shone again, and when they had performed this operation, which never took very long, the spoons being nearly as large as the bowls, and I think that tells you something, doesn't it? It tells you they're not really being given much to eat. The spoons that they're eating from are sorry, I'm just checking what my dog is up to. The spoons are as big as the bowls themselves, so they're not being given enough food. Where had I got to? This is just like class, isn't it? Me forgetting where I've got to. They would sit staring at the copper with such eager eyes as if they could have devoured the very bricks of which it was composed. So they're still hungry after they've eaten. Employing themselves, meanwhile, in sucking their fingers most assiduously, with the view of catching up any stray splashes of gruel that might have been cast thereon. Boys have generally excellent appetites. Oliver Twist and his companions suffered the tortures of slow starvation for 3 months. At last they got so voracious, and that's another word you're going to be looking up in a minute, and wild with hunger, that one boy, who was tall for his age and hadn't been used to that sort of thing, for his father had kept a small cook shop, hinted darkly to his companions that unless he had another basin of gruel per diem, and that means per day, but that is one of the words you're going to be looking up in a minute, he was afraid he might some night happen to eat the boy who slept next to him, who happened to be a weakly youth of tender age, and tender just means young. He had a wild, hungry eye, and they implicitly believed him. So basically, this lad is so hungry that he's saying, you know, if they don't start giving us some more food, I'm going to have to eat the lad next to me in the bed next to me at night. It's just going to happen, everyone. He had sorry, I read that bit. A council was held, lots were cast who should walk up to the master after supper that evening and ask for more, and it fell to Oliver Twist. The evening arrived, the boys took their places, the master in his cook's uniform stationed himself at the copper. His pauper assistants ranged themselves behind him. The gruel was served out, and a long grace, which is another word for a prayer, was said over the short commons. And that just means over the food. The gruel disappeared, the boys whispered each other and winked to Oliver, while his next neighbours nudged him. Child as he was desperate with hunger and reckless with misery. He rose from the table and, advancing to the master, basin and spoon in hand, said, somewhat alarmed at his own temerity, "Please, sir, I want some more." And those are the famous lines we know, and those of you that have seen the film will know what happens. Okay, so the first task you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking up these words that were in bold, and you're going to be putting the meaning there. Now, you can do that on your phones, guys. There's lots of online dictionaries. Okay, so the first one's been done for you, and it says that a copper, I know we think of copper like copper pipes, it's a large boiler used for cooking. Okay, so that's what this gruel was made in. So that's the first task, and it goes on to 2 pages. Then you're asked to list 3 things you learn about life in the workhouse. Okay? So the first one might be that the boys didn't get enough food. Have a think about anything you think you've learnt about life in the workhouse. Alright? Then you're going to try and find 2 words to show how hungry the boys were, and you put them in there and there. And if you're able to do an explanation as to what those words mean or make you think of or remind you of, you can add that in for me. Then the next task, and obviously what you can do, guys, when you're watching this video is you can stop it, do the task, and then think, right, I'm going to press play again, hear Miss Magee witter on, and do the next activity. Then you're asked, what does the writer describe at the beginning of that extract? And that's something at GCSE that we're often asked to do. Okay, so look at the beginning and see what the writer's telling us, and why do we think the writer has done that? Then, and the writer in this case is Charles Dickens, very famous writer. Then you're asked to look at in the middle, what we're told in the middle, and then at the end. And that's to help you look at structure. Okay, so the way something's put together, the way a building's put together, you might have a block of flats, you might have the basement, the main bit, and the sort of top flats. So how has the story been put together? Okay, then a bit of a longer writing task, if you're up to it. And it says, a student having read this section of the text said, this extract effectively shows how horrible it was to live in the workhouse. To what extent do you agree? And how does the writer show you this? So I want you to tell me, you might not be able to do the second part yet, because I haven't really taught you how to do that yet. But do you agree that it wasn't very nice to live in a workhouse? So I want you to write and say what you think there. Okay, and then that's the end of the first lesson. So you're aiming to do 1 of these a week. So it's not too difficult. All right, have a go. Use your phones. You can write in the booklets. And if you have any problems, get a message to school, or when one of the teachers from school phones, say, can Miss Magee give me a ring because I'm struggling with this activity. Okay, good luck and enjoy it. All right, thanks then.